Hey everybody. So the 3.19 expansion league's coming up for PoE, and I have some league starter builds for you guys right here. The first build I'm going to recommend is a LS Champion. I played this last league. It's pretty strong and it's like a very good league starter. You don't need that much gear to get going. So as far as leveling goes, you're going to just pick up Splitting Steel, Onslaught, Chance to Bleed. You play Helix basically the entire way through. You're going to play Helix all through all the acts, and you're going to also play Helix in mapping. You can switch to LS once you get additional strike gloves. I forgot to mention also here, you can also pick up a talisman with, I believe it's called Tribal Fury, right? Yep, Tribal Fury. That note, talisman with Tribal Fury. So until you get +1 strike on the gloves or talisman of Tribal Fury anointed, you can't switch to LS really. So that doubles your damage. So until then, you just play mostly Fizz Helix with a two-hander, and that should be very smooth until probably late yellows is I think when I swapped out and I found like additional strike gloves. But until then, just play Spectral Helix. You can also play Shattering Steel if you don't like how Helix plays. Alright, so for the Ascendancy, we are going First Strike, Last to Fall, Unstoppable Hero, Fortitude, and Inspirational is the last one. You're getting Last to Fall, or you're getting a First Strike, Last to Fall first because we are using Corrupting Fever with 2 supports that will proc low life, and if you get low life, you can grab Adrenaline every 20 seconds while leveling, and that's like the strongest Ascendancy you can start with for a champion, because the first one for Fortify doesn't really do anything because you're not gonna have Fortify yet. It only works once you get the second Fortify or this Ascendancy node. So you can just do first lab and then skip the second lab and do second lab and third lab at the same time, since this doesn't really add anything. You're not gonna be fortified. Alright, as far as the items go, we just have a generic claw right here. It's just like you use a deafening of lightning. I would suggest deafening of lightning to help the Trinity, since lightning has a high and low damage potential. It can roll from like 1 to 200 or something like that. If you get a fire or a cold roll, they're more consistent. They're always like average 100 damage. So try to use the deafening of lightning to craft a claw. You basically just want one roll, one like generic fire roll, and hopefully get attack speed, and that's like good enough. This is like a 450 DPS claw elemental. And this already like with this pretty much starter gear. They probably first week type of gear for average player, I think. You can get 3 million Shaper DPS, so that is more than enough to clear like most of the game. The only things you can't do is probably Uber bosses, or I would say Feared would be somewhat difficult with this DPS. So other than that, you're pretty good, and I guess Delirium is also difficult at the high waves. So we're using a shield. You're trying to get crit reduction here. That's the main important stat. Everything else is just life, resist, suppress. As far as the helmet and all the rest of the gear, it's just life and suppression. Just nothing really important. The only important thing, like I said, is the strike skills. For the gloves, the amulet is just a life, crit, whatever elemental damage flat you can find. You want to agate because you're going to be lacking in strength and int. You probably need some stat roll somewhere. You probably need the accuracy roll on one of your rings too, ideally. And you're using a perseverance, which is the must-have item for the build, because your champ, you always have fortify, so this gives you onslaught and gives you 30% of the damage according to calcs right here. And we are using Mark of the Elder in the other ring slot. The other slot has to be a Shaper ring. Doesn't really have to be Vermilion, but get whatever. And this will give you a lot of attack damage, at least for starter build. As far as the tree, not too much has changed from last league. It's basically all the same. You might have to get 2 more suppression nodes here because they lowered suppression on gear. More suppression on the trees probably need. Everything else is the same. We lost the aura node here, the aura reservation node, so I think last league I stacked 4 permanent 50% auras. That's probably gonna be too hard and not worth it. Even like last league, it probably wasn't worth it. So you're just grabbing all the claw nodes. Um, it's pretty self-explanatory. There's nothing too crazy here. I have some leveling notes for you guys if you want to read that, but it's just a physical spectral helix until lightning strike. So as far as the endgame build, I will show you the changes for 3.19. I'm going to change the skill tree really quick here to the endgame. I made the endgame 3.19 build. So the main change between this and last league is we are using the vertex. We're using the vertex because you cannot do a life tap with divine blessing anymore. So to get a blessing aura, we have to use the vertex for lowering the mana cost. We are also using the vertex because they removed the Gravicius mod, which was life as extra ES. That doesn't exist anymore. So without that was the main source of ES previously. That doesn't exist, and we still want to get ghost dance because we have a lot of evasion. So the best way to get ES for me, I found, was using the vertex, which gives pretty decent chunk of ES. All right. You also get a strength ES hybrid shield. You basically want which one you're lacking of, evasion or armor. You can use the evasion ES shield or armor ES shield depending on which one you have lower. It should be armor usually. In most cases, armor should be lower, so I opted for armor ES shield. So between those two, we have 700 ES, which gets proc 3 times for the first 3 hits, right? So that's a decent amount of tank. So we are using, like I said, the vertex as an endgame build because it lowers the mana cost of socketed gems. So for my socketed gems here, the main change is right here, default skills. Where is this? Where's my divine blessing? So divine blessing here, we are using inspiration in divergent version. This divergent version alt quality lowers the mana cost. If you lower the mana cost between this and the helmet, you can see our anger costs only 24 mana. So that's how we get a divine blessing buff still for 50% aura. Other than that, the build has not changed too much. The only other major change from last league is that for this build, you no longer have any way to easily proc adrenaline. That means we just don't have adrenaline like on demand. You could do something with a weapon swap and reserve like a blood or was it arrogance aura like that, something like that. You could do like a weapon swap and get 25% aura with some reserve as life, and then that could proc adrenaline. But it's pretty clunky, and I just didn't feel like the playstyle like is just too clunky. I'd rather just play without it, and the DPS was fine. If you have like time, like before a boss fight, before a spawn or something like that, you could proc it, but in the actual boss fight, it's very clunky. So, just no way to proc adrenaline on demand. But other than that, there's not too much changes. The endgame version has more than enough damage for Uber bosses. I did it. So 16 million when you have double vol strikes going, and then double hit against Ubers. It has around 5 million or something like that. It says 9 million, but that's with everything proc. You're not gonna always have all double souls up, but that's more than enough damage to destroy the bosses. And this is without flask ticked on. So that's my first recommended build. Alright, let's go over the second build I am recommending for this league. The Poisonous Concoction Pathfinder is my second recommended build. I played this way back when it first released. It's pretty strong and very smooth leveling. Like, it doesn't need anything at all because you don't need to scale the weapon. Everything just scales with gem levels from the Poisonous Concoction gem, so it's extremely strong at leveling. So I would start out right here. We have Caustic Arrow, Pierce, and Onslaught. That's what I used for like the level Act 1, right? You get the Poisonous Concoction right before reveal, basically. So as soon as you can pick up, just start using it. You want to link it to Lesser Volley and Onslaught. Eventually, you just want to add LMP and lesser volley and onslaught, so you just have like a bunch of additional projectiles. You want to try to get as much poison chance as possible ASAP, and then it just goes from there basically. No, basically runs itself. You just throw poisonous concoction flasks at like the enemy, and they die really fast. So you want to beeline it to this claw mastery pretty early. Ideally, you want to get this plus 10 life gain on hit and 5 mana life gain on hit. This basically completes your entire sustain for all the campaign. It's like extremely strong early because you get like at the beginning you get 5 projectiles total, and then later on when you get GMP in greater volley version you get like 9 projectiles and like maybe 7 to 8 hit if you target correctly. So that's just a lot of life gain on hit and mana gain on hit. That basically just fixes your sustain for this build. Eventually, when you get high levels, you cannot be poisoned from crits, so you just don't have to worry about getting a spiky crit damage. As far as the tree goes, nothing changed too much. Just mostly life. You might need more suppression nodes, like I mentioned earlier. There was a suppression nerf for gear, so maybe you need more suppression on the tree. So you're just getting all the poison nodes, suppression, some accuracy here. You can need a cluster jewel to scale the damage much higher because poisonous concoction is hard to scale like chaos dot and poison damage without the cluster because there's just not that much on the tree. Grabbing grace, we're grabbing more flasks here. I felt that this makes the build a lot more comfy when you have flask regen here, just because life flask is used when you use poisonous concoction as extra damage. So everything else is pretty standard poison build. We're getting this eventually for our leech once we drop the life gain hit and the mana gain hit right here eventually. So the chaos large cluster is big damage. You really just want the first 2 nodes, honestly. Like you see, I'm not using the back node, but you still need 3 notables for the ideal like setup. These are pretty easy roll. You don't actually need any levels on this. Like this can be a level 0 large cluster. You just need the 8 passives. You can roll it as soon as you find one that's 8 passive. It's a little bit pricey, but it's not too hard to roll. To roll this, you just like chaos spam with the harvest craft. So this league, there's a harvest bench in the hideout. You just do reroll chaos until you get 3, just 3 notables basically. You really just want to make sure you have unwavering, unholy grace for attack speed and chaos. The other node just random chaos, generic chaos damage. Other than that, you're good to go. The medium cluster should be pretty cheap. You can roll these the same way, use chaos, or you can also roll life because flow of life has a life tag. Alright. I wanted more tanks, so I got flow of life. Ideally, this is the best one. Flow of life and circling oblivion makes your poisons last longer and more damage, and that gives you health. But these shouldn't be too hard to roll either. Same thing with harvest, just roll life or in chaos until you get something good. You want to be 5 passives, and that's it for the clusters. These shouldn't be too hard to roll. This will get you up to red maps, like a T12 on a 5 link. You're using, Plague Bearer as far as skills. You're just like using this. Poisonous Concoction as your main damage, and then Plague Bearer helps with clear. For my version, we are using Determination and Grace, so we're going to try and become very, very tanky. We're using Ancestral Protector, so we throw flasks faster, and then it also does withers for us. We also have a Withering Step with increased duration, and Vol Molten Shell with increased duration. That's just our cast 1 damage taken skill, and then Withering Step. You want to get Anomalous as soon as you can. Anomalous adds 2 more withers to the level 20 gem. If you can evolve it to 21, you actually get +1 wither, so that's 9 withers on click basically, which is like pretty good. Was it 2/3 of the way to max because you can get 15 withers maximum on an enemy, and these last let's see the calcs. They last pretty long with increased duration, and where is this? There it is. Withering Step. Where's the duration? Where can we see the duration? Duration mod 1.3. So it's almost twice as long. So it's about a 6-second wither almost, with just the increased duration and a little bit duration from the tree for skills. So that lasts pretty long. As far as this goes, once you get the 6th link, you should be able to do red maps, no problem. T16 red maps. The bosses might be a little bit slow, but they're not too bad. With enough gear, we have, what is it, 2 million damage here. That's enough to kill like regular bosses, like we're talking about Uber Elder. You definitely cannot take Uber bosses on this build though. That's one negative. So because I wanted to kill Uber bosses on this build, we're doing a tech switch for the super endgame. I'm adding this as an experimental because this relies on 2 items. You are switching to Spectral Helix and using the Covenant. This has been updated this league, right? It adds level 29 added chaos, which is a lot of flat chaos. So this ton of flat chaos scales really well with Spectral Helix because Spectral Helix has a very high damage multiplier. You can see 21 has 255 multiplier, and we're adding a level 30 added chaos, which is a ton of added damage. You can see right here. Level 30, this one adds 415 to 623. That's just from the chest, so that will give you a lot of damage. As far as the claw goes, the claw is a void fang. You have to get this from Heist or trade for it, and then after you trade for it from Heist, you have to slam it with any influence orb and then do switch influence on a weapon until you get Elder. I don't know if this craft still exists. I assume it's gonna exist because I don't see why it wouldn't exist in this new league, but if it doesn't exist, that means you're going to have to woke orbit this with an Elder mod claw basically. So you're gonna have to find a Elder mod claw, and then after you slam the void fangs, you have to woke orbit so you can get Elder influence, and then you just roll Reforged Chaos. It shouldn't be too hard to roll that multi with this weapon plus flat chaos. There's only one flat chaos roll, and there's like 2 or 3 fizz dot with this weapon mods, and then you can just multi-mod attack speed and then chaos dot multi for the suffixes. And that should be a very strong claw. So you can see my damage is up to 6 million here compared to the 2 million with the Poisonous Concoction. Because Poisonous Concoction just does not have that much single target. That's why we are tech switching over here. So that's the main change here. So one other downside of the Covenant is that it makes life cost equal to base mana cost. To get around that, since we are Pathfinder, we can craft on reduced mana cost onto a flask. We are scaling a bit of curse, or we are scaling a bit of flask effect, so that's much stronger for us, right? What is it? You can see right there, it's 62% less mana. And as a Pathfinder, you can see the uptime is already, on average, it's 89. But you'll also be getting some flash charges for clearing, so that should be 100% uptime while clearing. And then even against Uber Boss, you do get some flash charges when you do damage. So it should have close to 100% uptime, basically, for all these flashes. Yeah, most of these flasks are like high 80% uptime, so on average, you should unless it's a very, very long fight where there's a lot of pauses in the battle, you should have perma uptime on all these flasks. That's why I have them clicked. This will give you enough damage maybe to kill the the Uber bosses. So once I fix the tree to the Helix version, we are adding ghost stances for some tank. What else are we adding? So where did we get this? We have about 638 ES, which isn't that bad because you get a lot of ES from the Covenant. It's a ES body armor. So that's pretty strong. We still have the determination. We still have the energy shield. And since we are using the mana flask, which we have almost full uptime on, we can also add a divine blessing setup with malevolence in this build. You can add a 4 link right here, malevolence for extra damage, right? We are using inspiration like the other build is using, divergent to lower mana cost. We are using also anomalous increased duration. So this is just quality life, so the malevolence lasts longer, so you don't have to always spam it, and also lowers the mana cost. So you can see right here, my malevolence costs 0. So it's free. Like you can just press it, right? But this is the experimental build. This should theoretically kill all Uber bosses, more than enough damage. Decently tanky too. The resists are unbalanced because I didn't fill them out. If we fill them out right here, let's do this. We can do like, I don't know, 200 fire res. You can see the max hit will be 42,000. So 42,000, 39,000 for Fizz. Pretty tanky, not like the tankiest build, but more than enough to take on Ubers. And damage is pretty decent. We get 2.3, 2.4 million about. This with Helix hitting 2 times. Helix hits 2 to 3 times depending on the boss and like their movement. So the damage could be higher or lower depending on like where the boss is moving. If they're moving, it's probably much lower, but if they're staying still, which is most Uber bosses, damage should be a bit higher. Probably hits 3 times on average, but we went conservative and just put down 2. Like I said, this build is a bit experimental because I don't know how much this will cost and how rare this is in Trade League or in SSF. We have no idea. In this one, I don't know if you can do a weapon swap for influence in the harvest. I don't see why they would delete that mod, but if they did, that means you have to woke orb this, which makes it a lot harder to craft. But other than that, all the rest of this gear is just like generic life. We got damage multi on the amulet, some accuracy roll. You probably need accuracy roll on one of the rings. Get it, some on the rings and then on the amulet. And then just resistance and life. And then for searching eye for a Stygian, you can get accuracy roll there. That would help a lot. And other than that, it's just like not too special. Like we are using a thread of hope trick right here for some good nodes here. But other than that, we also have a brutal restraint. First, it has onslaught and kill here. It has some decent nodes, like what is it? This dex, flask gains. I believe there's some nodes that do poison damage. That's why this is the best one, but you have to just like find your own, right? This is the best one, at least potentially, but there is like poison damage nodes. I don't really have it sorted on this one currently, but that'd give you the most damage probably. Yeah. So this is Spectral Helix Poison Pivot in the endgame. Okay, one final build. This is super experimental with the new skills, which I have no idea how it feels like. So don't copy this build unless you really want to experiment. So this is elementalist lightning conduit. As you know, most people are trying to roll this as an elementalist just because the elementalist ascendancy is very strong. You get Shaper Storms, Shaper of Winter, so you get perma chill, and this helps you get max shock, which scales the lightning conduit damage. We're also getting Master of Discord and Heart of Destruction for more damage, and this gives exposure. So as far as the tree goes, we are non-crit. We are grabbing EO, since we are non-crit. We are just grabbing lightning nodes, some aura nodes, some generic elemental, and just a bunch of life right there. As far as we go up here, we are grabbing the lightning nodes for more lightning damage since, we're lightning. Grabbing more lightning effect. I don't know how much we'll need. This is just something you're going to have to experiment with. We are also EB. We grab the cluster jewel here. Grabbing these aura nodes here again, right? Some life. We need this wheel to fix my suppression. So we are using Grace and Determination on this build to be a little more tanky, and we need this wheel to get 100% suppression. Without this, it's just not possible with the nerfs to the armor. So we're going down here, just very efficient to grab all these stats. Honestly, we might drop it right here if these aren't that good. We're just gonna have to experiment. As far as my large cluster goes, We are using this spell one because since we are using EB, we cannot get Arcane Surge. This is like the only way to get Arcane Surge unless you're like Hierophant or something like that. Because we are EB. So EB solves the mana problem, but we never spam mana. That means we can't use Arcane Surge. So this is my way to get Arcane Surge because we only really need that damage probably against bosses. So you don't really need it against regular enemies. So that's a 10% boost if we can keep it up consistently against bosses, but we'll have to see if I can hit fast enough for that. And this just gives ES Leech to help keep up Eldritch Battery for our mana. And then I put 2 medium clusters for Overshock and Astonishing Elements. These give just more ailment effect and a little bit more damage. Lightning effect here. And lightning ailment lightning ailment effect and 30% more damage. Just generic jewels, life, spell damage, whatever. I'm not sure if we need these medium clusters. We'll have to see how much shock effect I need with the new support gem. That gives overshock, right? That's pretty much for the tree. As far as skills go, we are using Grace, Determination, Defiance. So we're trying to get some armor invasion because the Ascendancy is just pure damage, right? We do need a bit of tank. I don't like playing glass cannon. So you can see here we have 54 max hit. The armor should be probably around 40. I mean, elemental resistance should be around 45k or something like that. But I didn't fill out my resistances on the gear. That should be fine. And we are also walking around at 160% HP, which is decent enough. It's not the tankiest build, but we are elementalist, so that should be enough. As far as the main lightning conduit links, we're definitely using elemental focus, hypothermia, because the proc skill will always chill, so that's more damage there. We are using Conc effect if that works. I'm not sure if it works. We have absolution in right now for lightning conduit, but yeah. Also lightning pen and add lightning as the last link. As I said, I am not sure about the links yet. We'll just have to see. I'm not sure if Consecrated Effect works. It does have AoE tag, but yeah, unsure. This one, as far as the proc skill, is going to be Elemental Prolif Onslaught. And the last slot is for Overcharge. That gives us a more shock effect. We are putting in Stormbrand right now because I know I'm probably going to try to level up as Stormbrand. But we'll have to see. I heard Hydrosphere is very good for proccing the shock. But we're just going to have to experiment and see which is the best skill to shock all the enemies so then we can drop the lightning conduit. Honestly, I do feel like Galvanic Field might be better for like just regular clear. Maybe this is a weapon gem swap or a gem swap build, you know, where you just swap out Galvanic Field and Conduit depending on boss or clear. But we'll just have to see, right? And since we are using EB, we can do Divine Blessing with Wrath and increased duration pretty easily. But since we have all that energy shield mana, we can use as mana. Right now, the energy shield here is 48, but I haven't fixed it. I just get a couple ES item, ES evasion art, base armors. Probably the shield. And we can switch to evasion ES or armor ES depending on what I feel like the build needs. And probably one of these armor items will be ES hybrid also. That should be enough for the ES for EB. Eventually, I was thinking we should add a Doriani's gem for life as extra ES. That could just fill up the ES that way. Other than that, it's just Jade, Granite, Quartz, Quicksilver Flask. Nothing too special about a generic spell build. And yeah, we're just very experimental. Don't try this build unless you want to experiment. Might be bad, right? But this is why I'm going to league start. As far as videos of like me using the other two league starters, you can check my profile. I have the other videos on the other two skills. I have played Poison Spectral Helix, Poison's Concoction, and LS Champ already. So you can check out those other videos if you want to see how the clear and maps looks like and bossing looks like. Alright, thanks for watching. Good luck in this league. Hopefully you guys can drop a bunch of divines, alright? No more exalts. Alright, later everybody.